Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Book Talk. I'm Kathy Logan, and today I'll be interviewing award-winning author Grace Blair, one of the authors of the YA time traveler adventure Einstein's Compass. We will discuss book details, Grace's writing process, and the future of her exciting book series. Let's get into it. So for the first question I have for you is, why did you choose Albert Einstein as your titular character in your time traveling story?
Albert Einstein has always been an interesting character for me, an interesting person who looks like he's been famous most of his life, but he hasn't. And if you read his biography, which is what I learned, is that young Albert Einstein was just a young Jewish boy in a Catholic school who had so many struggles, but he had a dream. And I think right now we are looking to be inspired by people like Albert, to dream and to have something that keeps us involved and passionate about our lives. So young Albert Einstein was struggling with his genius of wanting to know, what is time, what is light, teach me. And he had no one to teach him. I know for myself, I had no one to teach me. And there's a lot of people who are smart and want to engage and do things in life, but there's no one to help them. And no one helped him either. And they were aggressively against him most of his life. But he never gave up. Where did it come from? So I had to think, maybe he came from Atlantis. And I began to dream, my dream of what Albert Einstein was all about, where he got his theories, and how he thought deep inside his consciousness, inside who he was. I did a lot of research on his history in terms of his early life and his family, who was involved in his family, and how he struggled, and who helped him and who didn't help him. But then I said, I still have this thing in my mind. Where did it come from? And I thought he has to be from Atlantis, that high technology, spiritual place where people knew how energy worked. And he was trying to remember what he did back then.
Gotcha. That's a really cool and interesting way of looking at Einstein, because because it does beg the question, how did he create such how was he able to create such an advanced theory in his time? I like how you took it, well, what if we added this element to his history? So wow, that's really good twist on history. But I want to ask you, because you did say that you did a lot of research into his biography, his family, his relationships. And I was just wondering, what was your writing process in writing for a young Albert Einstein? How did you go about emulating his personality, his morals? How did you go about emulating that?
What I discovered was that Albert was shy. He was really an introverted boy, and he was very sensitive. He loved music. He loved being around his family. His mother was the closest to him. And so when he was out there in the world, it kind of overwhelmed him. And he didn't know what to do with a lot of this outside influence, because he was so focused on reading and studying himself. He was given the 12 books that he would later be given in high school and in college to learn. He got them when he was 12 years old, and he mastered those books. He mastered the Pythagorean theorem on his own. So he was very much into his mind, into his genius as a young boy, and being out here with normal people, he just didn't know what to do or how to relate. And it became a struggle for him in communications of, how do I get heard? How do I get my needs met? And so there was a lot of back and forth with his teachers and people who didn't understand him. And I think there's a lot of that in schools today, where you have intelligent kids who are managed to memorize books on rote, and they're not really listened to in terms of their creativity. So he was trying to learn something new, but they were trying to force him into memorizing books, and it made him crazy.
I
I
can
want to know about time and
imagine.
light. Don't make me memorize this stuff. I already know it.
Right.
I know all this. Show me something new.
Don't make me stick to the status quo. Like,
And I think there's a lot of that with smart kids today. They're being made to read books, and especially during the reading process in English, books that are 50 years old. Why not read books that are more current, that are more in what the kids want to read today? Harry Potter, my book, Einstein's Compass, that are relevant to today's kids. Why make
agreed,
them
yeah.
read all these old authors that are dead and we can't talk to them?
Talk to them. Nope. You can't write them letters, can't like really interact with them. Be like, oh hey, I loved your book. No, I completely agree with that because speaking of which, I know, well, this is a bit separate, a little off topic, but I know like some elementary schools are campaigning to make the Hunger Games required reading for the curriculum because yes, it is a fairly recent book, but it's a really good book. So
It is. And if you could talk to the author,
yes, you can talk to the
that's
author.
important, I
Yeah.
think. And that's the connection today that a lot of readers want. They want their connection to the author. They can talk to them on Facebook and Twitter, and they can get their questions answered. And those are the questions today that kids need answered for their own creativity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like that. I totally agree with that. And that's like definitely like an interesting take on like so I know there's been like a lot of debates about like, like updating like books for schools. And I feel like that's like a definitely good side to that. Like you actually have authors. You actually have authors to like communicate with, to contact with. But I wanted to take it back to young Albert Einstein. And I know in your story, obviously, story has time traveling. And without getting into spoilers, I was just wondering, like, what are the different time periods or places that were your favorite to write about and research to like put into your story?
I loved the time period that he lived in, the Edwardian period, and Germany at that time was flourishing in its culture. And I liked all the places that I wrote in the book are real. The actual historical places in Germany are real. So I love doing the research on that time period and how the women dressed and the men wore top hats and how they talked to each other, Herr Einstein, and all this, formal talk. And then I liked the time period in Atlantis. And I did a lot of research on what I thought Atlantis was. I went to Plato and his story on Atlantis, and discovered a lot of what Atlantis was about in the technology times and flying cars and how they communicated and the crystals, how powerful the crystals were, the Andera crystals. And I put that a
Oh,
lot.
pretty, very pretty.
Yeah, I'm wearing the Andera crystal that's actually in the next book, which is Poseidon's Adventure. And it's the backstory of Einstein's compass. That's coming next, where I really
Oh,
get into
exciting.
Atlantis. Yeah. So my editor wanted to know more about Atlantis. So that's the next story is Poseidon's Adventure. And doing the research on Atlantis was really cool. And then the Shamir stone that's in the compass is very powerful. And actually, it's in the Bible. And Solomon used it to build his temple. The power in the Ark of the Covenant that you see in Indiana Jones, that was the Shamir stone.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
And it
okay.
also went back to Atlantis. And the Atlanteans built the pyramids in Egypt using the Shamir stone. Yeah. So
That's a really good connection. I like that.
yeah, it's really cool. And putting all these pieces together in story was just thrilling.
Definitely. I can totally agree with that because I feel like with any like time traveling story, it's just like it's definitely like a good opportunity for like you for like any author to just like, okay, what time period did I want this my character to travel in? Okay, but I gotta make sure this time period is very accurate. Make
Yeah,
sure
so you have to
it's
go
true to
back.
the history.
You have
Yeah.
to make sure the history of what the character is about is accurate, and
Hmm.
that way your story is more believable. To me, setting is the most important part of the story. I write in layers, and I start with story, then I start with the characters and develop them according to the setting. And I learned this from Ken Follett. If you read any of Ken Follett's books,
Hmm.
like Pillars of the Earth, you'll see that he has the background of the setting of history, and then he puts the characters in their history, and then how they relate to the time period. And then
Okay.
it's done in layers.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah, I like that. Like making it like layered like that. Okay. And like I was gonna ask, speaking of story, I know in like the book description, it says one of the obstacles that Einstein faces is a shape-shifting dragon. And without getting into any spoilers, like can you tell us more about who this dragon is and if they're like are they like the main antagonist of the story or is it just one of like the many obstacles that he faces?
It starts with twins in Atlantis.
Okay.
Albert's soul is actually from a pre-scientist who lives in Atlantis called Arca.
Okay.
And so Arca has a twin brother. And in Atlantis, there were a lot of twins. They just multiplied that way for some reason. Okay. So yeah, Arca was one of the main pre-scientists in Atlantis. And his twin brother, Raka, well, he was lazy and a narcissist. And he wanted everything his brother had, but he didn't want to work for it. And so, as we go along in the story, he wants the ultimate power, which is the crystals, so he can rule the world. And so he goes to the dark side. And I
Gotcha.
won't tell you how he becomes the dragon, okay?
Yeah.
But after he does become the dragon, he becomes 4 or 5 different characters, bad characters in the story.
Okay.
He morphs
Gotcha.
into them through a process which I won't tell you.
Right,
But
because that's spoilers.
yeah. And yeah, and you can actually, and I describe how from the dragon he becomes a person. Yeah, there's a real
Gotcha.
long description of how he becomes this magnetic, manipulative sociopath that can can get anything he wants just by being with this magnetic personality. Okay, that's just one of the
Right.
many characters that he morphs into that
Hmm.
Albert doesn't know he's being manipulated. He thinks he's a nice guy that's there to help him, but in
Yeah.
fact, he wants his compass, and so
Right.
but he can't touch it personally. So he's also lazy. He doesn't want to go after it himself. So he gets
Hmm.
other people. We have Wilhelm von Wiesel and the Countess, who are also dark characters in the story,
Hmm.
that partner with the dragon, what we call Raka. His name is Raka,
Rocco.
and with Raka and von Wiesel and the Countess, they try to manipulate the compass from Albert, and Albert doesn't know. He doesn't have any idea what's going on around him. He's
Yeah.
totally in the dark. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
That's I like that. That's a very interesting way to write an antagonist for like he's a bit of a bum, but he's still like gonna like,
he's
but
very
he's
smart.
yeah, very
He's
smart, but a bit of a
manipulative.
bum.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be manipulative if you're like lazy, you just want other people to do to do your
Yeah,
dirty work.
exactly.
So makes sense. But I was just wondering, so was there any like other like time traveling stories, movies, or like or any like other piece of media that involved time traveling that may have like inspired like this story, or at least like some bits of the story?
Well, I wrote this for the Harry Potter audience.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Potter was this young boy who had a magical wand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Albert has a magical compass.
Gotcha.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
there are similarities in terms of the dark people who want to attack Harry, similar to Albert.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's somewhat similar. Harry Potter had magic and dark things and flying things all around him. Albert has the light and angels and high beings, mystical travelers who help him through his journey to battle the darkness. So we
Gotcha.
do have a comparison, and I wrote it for the Harry Potter audience, really, and for
Mm-hmm.
families who want
Gotcha.
to join in together and learn about Albert and some of the heroes that Albert liked, that were really important to him. They're in the story as well.
Definitely. Okay, yeah, because I think that would definitely reach the Harry Potter crowd. Because I feel like when you have magic and you have, a young boy or young girl just like interacting with that magic and then having to deal with like it definitely becomes like a fantastical adventure that like
Yeah.
anyone in that crowd would want to read. I like that. And I was just wondering, so what was the collaboration like for you and the other author of this book? And let me know if I'm saying the first name, but Laren Bright. What was
Yes,
the collaboration?
Laren has been a friend of mine for many, many years, and he is a professional writer who helps authors develop their stories and books. And I just started writing this book. It was a time for me to do this. It was time for me to write. And I
Hmm.
started writing chapters and sending them out to my friends. And Laren would answer me back, "Oh, this is fun. Oh, do this or do that. You might want to think about that." And we went back and forth on this for several times that I was writing chapters. And I had no idea how to write a novel. Okay. I'd never done this before.
Hmm.
So he said to me, I'd really like to help you with this book. And I go, okay, um, let's do this. So
Get
I
on
would,
board.
yeah. And he was really in publishing and writing and had a lot of jobs going. And between then, he would help me. I would send him some information or send him a story, and he would say, let's do this, let's do that. And, it was a collaboration. It went on for 4 years. Yeah, this was a long project.
I mean, I
Yeah,
bet like writing
yeah.
novels is no
And
easy job.
yeah, and I was learning how to write fiction. And I was researching and doing all the character development. And we just went along like this. We just were very flexible and collaborative and our intention was the spirit of the story. Neither one of us got attached to our egos or what my way, this can't work,
That's always good. That's always good.
yeah. Yeah. So we were really in the spirit of the story.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what made it work.
Definitely. Yeah. I feel like if there's no butting of heads and everything, then like you really got like a perfect collaboration. But I was just curious though, why why make like the primary magical object or like the primary time traveling device, like why make it a compass for Einstein? Like I was just wondering that.
The reason why I made it the compass is because Albert's father in his real life gave him a compass when he was a little boy.
Okay.
And Albert, when he got this little compass, he was like 5 or 6 years old, and it kind of filled his whole hand. He's a little boy with this brass compass with 12 different gems on it, which were powerful gems.
Hmm.
And inside was the Shamir stone. And so Albert looked at this compass. And actually, the compass his father gave him was just a compass. Okay. I made it supernatural. But
Gotcha.
his dad gave him this compass. And when he looked at it, when little boy looked at it, he said, he turned it around and he always noticed that the pointer always pointed north. No matter how he turned the compass around and bent it and upside down and whatever, the needle always pointed north. And he said, I'm going to figure out why it does that. And that was his inspiration to know what is time and what is light.
That's a really cool connection.
And he carried this compass with him all his life. This was his, between that and the algebra book, algebra book was his Bible. He carried those two things with him throughout his life. And so that's why I made the compass part of the story, because of how it inspired him. And so I made it supernatural to take us into dimensions of light.
That I really like that. That's really cool. Like making the object that meant to him, like that was special to Einstein in real life, and still making it special, but even more special.
Yeah, taking it to a new dimension.
Yeah. I really like how you keep like connecting, like using the real historical and then just like bringing it into your book, and like I really like that. But I wanted to turn from the book to, because I always like to ask my authors this towards the end of our interviews, and I was just wondering, what are some of your favorite authors or books?
Well, in science fiction fantasy, I like the Chronicles of St. Mary's. Jodi Taylor. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She's out of London. She has a number of series of science fiction, fantasy, historical fiction. I like her series. I also like I said, Ken Follett. I love his historical fiction. And Bradbury, he was probably one of the best science fiction writers ever. So he's one of my favorites that I go to, especially if I'm lost and I don't know what I should do next. I read him. It's like feeding my soul, the way Bradbury writes. He's just, it's like poetry for me. So some of those are some of the writers I really like. And Susanna Kearsley. I don't know if you know Susanna Kearsley. She's a writer. I think she's Scottish. And I like a lot of the Scottish historical fiction that she writes about.
Good. Thank you for those recommendations. Those all sound like really interesting books. And can you give me a name of the book for the last author you mentioned, the Scottish one? Like what's one of her books that she's written?
I'm sorry, which one?
Oh, just like the last one you mentioned, the
Susanna Kearsley?
Yeah, Susanna Kearsley. Yeah.
Susanna Kearsley. She's actually, I can't think of the name of the book off the top of my head, but you'll find it. She's very popular. Kearsley, Susanna Kearsley. She's a historical fiction writer and writes a lot about Scottish history. One more thing.
Oh yeah,
one more
course,
thing.
Yeah.
Einstein's Compass is going to become a movie. Yes, I am right now.
It's going to become a movie, really?
Yes, I'm working with a screenwriter out of London and a literary agent out of London, and we're working on a screenplay to make the first pilot, which will become a series, and it's going to be made in Germany in the next couple of years.
Oh my! How did that come to happen? And now I need to know, like, how did that whole development happen? Like, who
I worked with a woman, her name is Jane, with Bedside Reading. She does promotions for people who want to get their books in high-end hotels. She's also a movie producer who has connections in Hollywood with a producer by the name of Rocky Lang. And Rocky is a very famous producer who has done a lot of work there. His father was a big mogul in Hollywood. And so Rocky and I created some marketing materials for Einstein's Compass. And it went to literary agents around the world, and we got picked up in London by Julian Friedman. And so we are working with his literary agent and writer Andy Briggs, who is helping write the screenplay. And so we have a mission.
Oh, that is amazing. I'm so happy to hear that for you. Oh my gosh, that must be so exciting.
If you want to know more about Einstein's Compass, go to einsteinscompassbook.com. Also, you can friend me on Facebook and Twitter, Grace the Mystic, on Twitter and also on Facebook. And I would love to hear from anyone who wants to read the book, connect with me as an author. I would love to give new authors tips, because I do help new authors as they're getting launched. I've helped them from a struggling writer to become an award-winning author like me. And Einstein's Compass has won 10 book awards.
Amazing.
Yeah, during the time of
Yeah.
COVID, that's what I did. I went out and got book awards.
That's a good way to spend your time.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind, would you mind just like sharing a tip or two for any aspiring authors listening to this podcast right now?
I'd say do your book from the passion that you have in your heart. If you don't have passion for it, forget it, because it's just going to be too hard. You have to have passion for the story to get through all the obstacles of how you're going to write the setting and the characters and how they're going to work together. And then the second thing is find a community where you can connect with other authors, where you feel supported and they can give you feedback. So those two things, and just keep writing. You just have to keep doing it to get better.
Gotcha. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Grace, for your time and for giving us all that really cool information about your book and for giving us that very exciting news about your book being developed into a movie. That's amazing. And thank you for those great tips. So yeah, thanks so much again for providing your time for this interview. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Kathy. I've had a great time.
Thank you all for listening. That was Grace Blair, and her book Einstein's Compass is currently available on Amazon. Be sure to check out Book Talk's other author interviews, which are available on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts.